Secretary will read Senate Bill 78.
Senate Bill 78 by Senator Anderson of the 24th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 2 of Title 26 relating to the adulteration and misbranding of food so as to authorize the Commissioner of Agriculture to issue a variance or waiver to certain rules and regulations of the Department to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommend that this bill to pass, submitted by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th.
Misbranding of food. Pretty bold piece of legislation. Chair recognizes Senator from the 24th to present this important piece of legislation for the safety of the citizens of our great state of Georgia. Senator from the 24th, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate, it's my pleasure to bring Senate Bill 78. This bill is coming in front of you today on the request of the Ag Department of the great state of Georgia. This legislation is needed for the Department of Agriculture to issue variances to certain food safety regulations. These variances are required to make certain food products are part of the federal guidance and handed down from the FDA. This bill will give the department the flexibility to accommodate businesses while continuing to protect the public health. This legislation does not directly relate to adulteration or misbranding of food or foods labeling in any way. This primarily impacts retail stores who engage in specialized food processing, such as grocery stores and meat markets. For example, smoking food, such as processed meats, smoked salmon, ham hocks, also cured food, such as beef jerky, salt and pork, sausage, salami. This legislation in no way allows for food manufacturers to bypass our regulations, which may encourage or allow for the sale of hazardous food products in the state of Georgia. I ask you for your favor to vote on this bill, Senate bill. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh. I'm gonna stand up and get a stronger stance.
I tell you, you might need more than the preacher today in the well. I'm gonna tell you, the way this board's lit up. Senator, you going to yield for some questions?
I just ask you to vote yes for this bill, Senate Bill 78.
Well, I think
I yield well if there's any questions.
Well, yeah, you've got plenty of questions. You're not going to be able to yield that well. Something that's this important to the safety and well-being of the citizens of our state will be purely vetted in this body. Chair first recognizes the senator from the 53rd, the Distinguished Rules Committee chairman, who somehow let this bill on the floor today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have deep concerns here. Senator, would you yield?
Be my pleasure.
I'm not going to ask you about adulterated. There'll be somebody to ask you about that. But that brings me to this part. Usually bills of this sensitive value have moral certainties in this bill or ethically provisions in this bill. Could you direct me to the location of the part where it talks about moral turpitude in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, all I know is this is a good, safe bill for food for our people And I just ask you to vote for yes for this bill.
Senator Yield, for a better question,
Yes, sir.
I'm looking for a better response, to be honest with you. Could you tell me why you don't have a provision in here about moral turpitude?
Pardon?
Yes. Could you tell me why there's not a part in here that talks about moral turpitude?
I still don't understand you.
Okay. Could you tell me what moral turpitude is?
Barbecue.
Okay. All right. Mr. President, I'm gonna. No more questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
Chair
yield the will
recognizes
with no
Senator
question.
from the 9th. Senator from the 9th, Gwinnett County.
Do you yield?
I do.
Do you think that the people of the 24th District are moral, virtuous, and good people?
They're the greatest people in the greatest state of Georgia, sir.
Do you think they approve of your first bill being something that will allow a waiver for adulteration?
They understand that I've been very concerned about the food safety of the great state of Georgia in my whole political career, and that I will make sure that we have any kind of bill that goes in front of this great Senate to make sure that it's the great safety of for them be the safetiest food for them to eat.
So yes, they're proud.
They proud, sir.
Do you further yield?
I do.
On a serious note,
Yes, sir.
if you will point your attention to line 24 of the bill, and then also line 27 and line 39. On line 24, we talk about undue hardship. And then on 27 and 39, we talk about substantial hardship. Can you tell us the difference?
I don't believe it'd be no hardship on anyone that does the right thing in processing the food in this bill, sir.
I have no further question.
Thank you. I yield the well. If no
Well,
other questions.
unfortunately, it's not going to be that simple, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator in the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator, I too have a few concerns, and very bold of you to pick Title 26, Chapter 2, and modifying Article 34 on your very first bill. Isn't it true that this is your very first bill since your promotion to the Senate?
Yes, sir. And it's such an honor to present it to the greatest Senate in the great state of Georgia.
Would you further yield, Senator?
Yes, sir.
So, Senator, I did a little bit of research and looked at your campaign materials in your recent election. And isn't it true that you had expressed that you're going to believe in limited and smaller government for the citizens of the 24th District? Is that not true?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I saw that same.
Yeah. So, Senator, if you could further elaborate and answer the question of why you are doubling the size of this code section, adding to the law, if you truly believe in lessening the size of government.
Very good question.
I believe in our ag commissioner, and if the ag commissioner didn't need it, I wouldn't be standing here. But I believe in helping the Department of Ag, and it will help them to be able to make a safer food.
Senator, I'm glad you mentioned the Department of Ag. I just have two further questions here because on Title 26, Chapter 2, Article 34, it specifically relates to the Department of Ag in 40-7.1. Could you give us a little overview of what that reference is so we understand the full scope
I'll be
of the bill?
glad to get all that information to you by 5 o'clock this afternoon, sir.
Good answer. Senator, will you yield for one last question?
One last question.
Do you believe if this bill passes today that you will be fully housebroken?
Chair recognizes Senator from the 52nd. 52nd. Chair recognizes Senator from the 46th, the Majority Leader. State your.
Mr. President, I'm so lost in this conversation. I would ask if the chair, the president, would consider calling on the senator from the 8th to help interpret some of these responses for us.
Well, I think the senator from the 8th light has been on. He's not in order, but in light of the majority leader's request and the fact that there is probably even greater request outside of this chamber for the senator from the 8th to ask some questions of the senator in the well, I will actually call upon the great senator from the 8th from Lowndes County, one of our finest, to ask some questions. Obviously, he's been in ag all of his life and understands this issue probably better than most. Senator from the 8th, you are recognized to question the senator from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think before we vote on this, I need to vote out this senator, see if he's really qualified to be carrying an ag bill.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mr. Senator, for what purpose would a farmer choose to use a set of buzzard wings?
Hold on. Say that again.
I said, for what purpose would a farmer choose to use a set of buzzard wings?
Yeah. Senator has a
I
valid question, Senator. In the
Senator, I guess just to fly away.
Well, since you flunked the practical test, let me give you a technical question. As a farmer, and I'm sure you've had to deal with pH.
pH.
Can you tell us what pH really is?
I like to stay focused on the bill. This is a good bill, and we need to make sure that we pass it for the Department of Agriculture. Senator,
Well, you're going to flunk the technical part.
Technical part has been flunked. So practical and technical has been
Let's talk
flunked.
about the social aspects of it now.
Social aspects?
Of farming. I'm sure that you've been in the dairy business side, is that right?
been in the what now?
The dairy business?
The dairy, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Did you use bulls or you use artificial insemination?
I used artificial insemination.
Any of your cows ever exhibit any homosexual behavior?
Senator, I'd be glad to discuss all my cows to you after we adjourn today, Mr. Chairman. If there's no other questions, I yield the word.
No, I think the senator from the 8th.
I'm not satisfied with that dismissal. I think that's a legitimate question, needs to be addressed.
Yeah. It doesn't appear as if the senator either has the facts about this bill
I'm not sure it even knows.
from both a practical, technical, or social aspect. So it appears to me, has failed on all three categories. Is there another category the senator from the 8th?
I think he's flunked the test. Thank you.
He's flunked the test as well. Anybody think they can? Well, actually, the senator from the 26th is recognized to ask a few questions. Another very distinguished member of Ag, and you recognized for some questions now, Senator.
Thank you, sir. Senator Yield. Does it Senator Yield?
I do.
Senator, I listened to you as you were describing the various foods, sausages, and all of those other things, but I didn't hear you mention wrinkled steak.
Who?
Wrinkled steak.
I believe you misunderstood.
No, well, other words, chitlins.
Chicken. Once again, I hate to correct you, but I think you was misunderstood. I yield well.
No, it doesn't happen that way, Senator. As many issues this bill has, and the limited amount of answers you have given that have been appropriate for this body, we've got several more questions. Chair will now recognize Senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. With Senator Yield,
Yes, I will.
you know, like the senator from the 53rd, I don't want to get into the adulteration, fornication, whatever that issue is, but what I want to talk about is promulgation. You seem to be fixated on promulgation in this bill.
Right.
In fact, an average of every seventh line you're promulgating
Yeah.
in this bill. So
I
the
noticed
question
that.
I've got is, are you a promulgator? And could you tell me what a promulgator is?
I noticed that. That's a good question. Senator, surely you'll be able to answer that one.
I stand here firm for the great state of Georgia, for the people in the great state of Georgia, to make sure we have the best food possible for them to enjoy. I ask you for your, to vote yes on this bill.
Vote yes. It doesn't work that way, Senator.
I-
Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st, the minority leader. Yes.
Mr. President, thank you. Senator Yield?
Yes, I do.
Senator, is it not true that the many state agencies have the Administrative Procedures Act, and like the Department of Public Health can make changes or variances on their own without coming to the legislature?
Right.
Is it not true that the department that you're working with today, Department of Agriculture, was expressly removed from that Administrative Procedures Act and do not have that authority?
That's correct.
And Senator, could you explain to us why that was not given to the Department of Agriculture?
I do not know the reason, but they should have gave it to them.
Senator, so you are saying that the previous General Assembly was not too competent? Not smart?
saying that.
Stupid?
They might have been just an oversight.
So, although there was an express removal of the Department of Agriculture from the legislature, you didn't kind of investigate why that was or how that might protect public health.
Repeat the question, please.
Senator, you further yield.
I do.
Senator, so, you know, we had talked previously about line 24 on undue hardship. What is your understanding of undue hardship?
I don't believe this bill makes anyone that, in any kind of shape, form of a hardship, that this will make a better food for our great people in the great state of Georgia.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator 31st, who happens to be one more question. Senator from the minority leader wants one more question. Senator, you
Sorry,
recognize.
just look at the nature of the bill, knowing you mean it in good faith. Did you reach out to get any Democrats, get this to be a bipartisan measure? I didn't see any signed on here. How many Democrats were signed on of the 13 people?
I do have Democrats that have signed the bill, sir.
Bipartisan bill.
Thank you.
That might be the only hope you have at this point. Chair recognizes Senator from the 31st, very adverse on agriculture issues. Senator, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, I do.
There seemed to be some hesitation, and probably a good hesitation, not to talk about adultery, but you brought that up in your presentation of the bill. I think you stated that this does not directly deal with adulteration.
That's correct.
Does it indirectly deal with adulteration?
It does not deal with adulteration at all.
Senator, do you yield for further questions?
Yes, I do.
Did you have this bill drafted?
The the Ag Department had the bill drafted, and I'm trying to help our great commissioner present this bill.
Did you read the bill before agreeing to
Yes,
carry the water for
yes,
someone?
I did.
Why then would you allow on the first line of a bill that you're carrying, the very first statement is relating to adulteration?
This is the way that the Ag Department wanted to present the bill, and I agreed with it.
Did the commissioner ask you to bring a bill on adulteration?
Yes.
No further questions.
Senator from the 11th actually represents a big part of ag country in our state and happens to be an OBGYN. So let's see what he has to.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
Oh,
President.
inquiry. Okay, state your inquiry.
Could you check with your learned counsel? The description of this bill sounded much more like a deli menu than it did legislation. I would like you to make a ruling on whether this is really a bill or something that's being disguised that, you know, we might be having for lunch today.
Yeah, that one could be a possibility. I'm gonna, since he's saying it's the commissioner of ag that really wants this bill, I'm gonna let it move forward with a little bit of reservation here. Chair recognizes Senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, I will.
I noticed that you misbranded this bill as a House bill instead of a Senate bill.
That was
Is
a
that
very
correct?
bad mistake. Yes, sir.
Yes, it was.
I noticed you also talked about smoked products like smoked sausages, smoked chicken.
Salmon.
When you were in the House, did you sit next to Alan Peake?
No, I didn't. If there's no other questions, I'll yield the well. I ask you favor.
The senator's yielded the well. He's yielded the well. I'll tell you, he's yielded the well. Well, he's yielded the well, but I still am unsure of whether his bill will pass. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection agreed in the Porter Committee which fail to pass the bill? Chair is none. Porter Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are the objections? Chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill be passed? All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. We might have been able to sell tickets for that show. It was so good. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50.